employment relations. I noticed that I have on the call, I think about two entities that seem to be in the business of job placements. And what we have found in my substantive role in the Ministry of Labor is that we have a few companies that have outsourced their HR and their industrial relations services. So therefore, they are not employing workers directly. There is a confusion that happens where while the company, and I'll give a fictitious name, while the company ZQ Industries has outsourced its HR function, has outsourced its recruitment, ZQ is giving a contract to these workers that come from the outsourced company. That is wrong. It is incorrect. ZQ should only have one contract, and that one contract should be with that outsourcing company or company that does the recruitment. Therefore, those workers are to be employed directly to the company to which they were recruited or by which they were recruited. They are not to be having contracts with ZQ Limited. So for instance, in the global services sector, the BPOs, they have contracts with Netflix, they have contracts with Amazon. I'm hearing myself. Jada, your mic is open. Right. So they have contracts with a lot of these North American companies. These workers do not work directly as an employee of Amazon, for instance. They are employed to the local Jamaican company. And therefore, anything in relation to their payment, conditions of service, benefits, dispute is taken up with that Jamaican company. It cannot be that Amazon is giving them work in Jamaica. All right, I know that this is disturbing. Jada, your mic is on. I know that this one is a little bit disturbing for some persons because they didn't know that this is so. Is there anyone wanting to stop me here to have a discussion?
Hi, I have a question. This is Al Marie.
Yes.
Maybe you have said it before, but because it seems to be a break in the connection, what's the pros and cons of contracts of service versus contracts for service?
What are the pros and cons of contracted service?
Right, contract of service versus contract for service.
All right, so there's a slide that I'll go into it, but it depends on what exactly you need. What is the kind of service you're trying to get? So it has its strengths and weaknesses depending on what you want. If you're an organization that you do not have the time to manage all the HR ramifications relating to a worker employer setup, then what you would want is an independent contractor. But what you have to recognize is that when you have an independent contractor, that person is not going to be, or organization is not going to be available to you exclusively. They can do whatever they want, when they want, set their own rates. You can't give them wages because it's a contract sum and all of those things. So in another slide soon, you'll see some of those.
Thank you.
All right, so.
Morning. So Miss Crew wrote us.
Yes.
So listening to you, that means if you're employing somebody as contract for service, they have to come with their own skills. You're not allowed to train them nor provide
Exactly
tools.
so, my dear, because they are to come with their own skills. And a lot of organizations, it is felt by the government, wants to evade taxation. So they say, oh, they're independent contractors, so we don't have to pay no taxes for them. But when you look at all the other things that they do for this individual, it is reflective of our employer-employee relationship. And when you apply the acid test, just like what happened in the court recently, it comes up that all the other relationship elements that is examined reflects that of an employee-employer relationship. So for instance, if I have a plumber, he comes to fix my pipes when I have a problem. Why would I want to send him to plumbing school? Does that make sense? No. Because he's not an employee of mine. So therefore, if you have employed an independent contractor as an accountant, why would you be sending the person back to do training? No, it's not necessary because you have employed a service. Does that provoke any thoughts in the room? I don't know why my participants ain't gone quiet, so. You know, so we ain't gonna call the name now. So
Very thought-provoking, very thought-provoking.
I know it's very thought-provoking, and that's why I'm provoking your thoughts, because it has been provoked today. Because I would have done you an injustice if I didn't provoke your thoughts. So, Tina, what are your thoughts on some of the things I've been saying? Tina, where are you? Tina, you've stepped away. Or Karen Clayton, what are your thoughts?
Gillian, can I go ahead?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Jackie.
You are saying if you have independent contractor, they should come with the skills. Yes. But what if you find that providing the services, the skill set is not there that you would have expected? Can you go ahead and train the person to say, yes, you're not at the required skills, so I'm going to assist you in training you so that you can provide the necessary services that I need?
So let me ask you another question, Jackie. Why would you have engaged that service if it's not suitable for your need? You need to engage a right service.
Yes, you should. But some skills.
You see, what is happening to you, Jackie, is that you are turning an independent contractor into an employee, and you're hurting your own self as an organization. Because when you think you have done well by training that person and doing all of these employee things, they're going to turn around, collect your money as an independent contractor, then take you to court to say that they are an employee. And I've seen too many cases that have been successful in that regard.
If I may, Miss Gillian, I realize Jada mic is open, so I'm getting a feedback on my end. But if I may, and I refer back to the initial case that you started with regarding the weed worker man. Wouldn't he be classified as an independent contractor to us? So if he's not weed working the plates properly, I can't see myself sending him to training to clean my yard properly. I'd have to find somebody else.
And look here now. Remember me talking a patois and standard English. If the worker broke down, you need to go on one back. Because me not buying nothing for fixing worker. After it's not my worker. So Jackie, would you have fixed his worker?
No, no, because if
Exactly.
the
So why you
contract,
going to train the other person now, mate?
no, but what I'm saying, Gillian, yes, I understand. His tool, he's to provide the tools, and so
Yeah.
the worker is this tool. So yes, I would not. But there might be the service, depending on the services that you provide and the person, the skills are not there. You find that, for instance, you have somebody and he has to go out and meet customers. And
So
so
an
you want to,
orientation, an internal orientation is different from sending them to training.
okay,
Or a briefing session is different from sending them to training. And if
okay,
that is what you're doing, introducing them to the expectations of the organization and how you function, that's totally different. It's more a sensitization. It's not training.
okay,
All right. So we have to just make sure that we correct the language in how we express it to the contractor. All right. And you know, they say the devil is in the detail. It's not what you say, but how you say it. So clearly, what you would want to do is sensitize them about your operations rather than putting them through a training exercise. All right. So when we talk about a contract for service, it is the same as self-employment or own account work, right? If it's an individual that is involved. All right. So is there anyone on this call that still has a challenge with understanding the difference between a contract of service in principle and a contract for service? We're going to go into some more details, but the principle that's on screen, is there anyone that has a difficulty? And I'm repeating that if there is an outsourcing of HR or recruiting, that means the worker who is recruited does not work with the company that has contracted the recruiter, right? Just like we have the situation with the BPOs in Jamaica, they hire the staff to their local Jamaican company. Although that staff works with Home Depot or Amazon or some other North American company, while working in Jamaica, they are not an employee of that North American company, and therefore that North American company incurs no liability in relation to that particular worker. So if a security guard is employed to one of our noted security firms and comes to your office, National Solid Waste, to work, that security guard does not work with National Solid Waste. And therefore you have absolutely no jurisdiction to give them instructions in terms of how to do their work, when to do their work, how much they are going to be paid. National Solid Waste would have absolutely no jurisdiction in that regard. If you're having a problem with the conduct of that security personnel, then you would have to raise that concern directly with the security firm to which they are employed, right? And that security firm would then take the necessary action. And so it should be with all quote unquote contracts for service where there's a third party placement of workers. All right, so I know that this is especially important for the employment entities that are on the call today. All right, any question before I move from here? Because this is a very, very important slide. You can take the photograph if you so desire. All right, so we,
Rodas, I have
yeah.
a question per se. It's not as it doesn't relate to contract of or contract for service. That is clear. You had mentioned earlier everything that should be included in the contract, right? The
Yes.
contract of service. And you also mentioned about notice pay. I should have asked you at that point. If you issued a contract and the contract stipulates a 90-day, it doesn't say probationary period because it's a short-term contract. It is not longer than 90 days.
You're taking me ahead of my lecture, my dear. Hold the question,
Oh.
you soon get the answer. All right, sweetie?
I'll hold it.
Hold the question, me hear it, as one say. All right, but I'm
Okay.
taking it slowly because people are at different levels of exposure to contracts. All right, so I'm going systematically through. All right, so you soon get your answer. All right, next slide, Miss Bailey. All right, so when you have, so we talked about two different types of contracts. So you have a contract of service and a contract for service. The one I'm addressing now is the employee contract, or the one that's called the contract of service. This is the employer-employee relationship. And in this particular type of contracting, you can have a fixed term contract. This is where there's a defined period stated in the contract in days or weeks, months or years, right? That's a fixed term contract. And this is what a lot of persons are accustomed to. So when we talk about contract workers, this is the one that most people are referring to. Now you have indefinite contracts as well. These are the ones that the person is engaged to work, and once they're performing well, they will stay until retirement or until there is some kind of restructuring of the organization where they can be terminated on the basis of redundancy, or if it is that their performance or conduct is not in line with expectation, then they can be dismissed or quote unquote fired. So these two forms of contract of service are both covered under the Jamaican labor laws, right? So once a contract of service is being issued, there are certain minimum expectations. And I have put this up because there are a lot of persons who believe that if you are on a fixed term contract, you're not entitled to things like vacation leave, you're not entitled to maternity leave, you're not entitled to notice. It is not so. Once you're on one of these two contracts, which is a fixed term contract of service or an indefinite contract of service, you're entitled to all the things that the labor law stipulates. Is that clear? So I'm going to assume that it's clear.
Crystal.
Crystal clear?
Yes,
All
crystal
right.
clear.
I'm glad you never say clear as mud. All right, my friend. Next slide. So this is the one that I think Almarie, I think this is the one that you were waiting to see for a very long time. The difference between the contract.
Yes, thank you.
You can take a photograph of this one too. All right. So a contract of service, the person who signs a contract is referred to as an employee or a worker, and they have an employee-employer relationship, and they get the benefits under whatever is your remuneration arrangements. So the overtime and all of these little things, uniform allowance, transportation allowance, motor vehicle upkeep, commission, bonus, all of these things would accrue to this kind of a worker. Now, if it's a contract for service, the person or organization does not have an